You are listening to the new man, beyond the macho jerk and the new age wimp. Your host is men's coach Tripp Lanier.
Would you buy a shotgun to defend your career? How could facing death help you be stronger in other areas of your life? And how do you know when it's time to bend or when it's time to stand firm? Author and surfing legend Shaun Tomson discusses winning, surviving horrendous loss, and how you can make sure you're not one of the 1 million people who will die this year because of bad choices. Welcome to The New Man. Today we're talking with Shaun Tomson. He's a world champion and legendary surfer. He's a speaker, and he's also the author of The Code, The Power of I Will. Shaun, thank you for talking today.
Yeah, it's great to chat, Tripp.
There's a lot of wisdom in this book, a lot of practical wisdom, because it's based on your real-life experiences. But I keep getting drawn back to this image of you as a younger man, living on the North Shore of Oahu, which was kind of the Wild West of the Pacific at that time, and you got a shotgun to protect yourself. I'm just curious, what were you standing for? What kept you from just getting on a plane and getting the heck out of there?
Yeah, that was a long time ago. I was in Hawaii to compete like a lot of young guys, well, surfers that had aspirations of becoming great surfers. You had to go to Hawaii. Hawaii was, for us, the ultimate destination. That was Mount Everest, Mecca, Annapurna, K2, you name it. It was sort of the place you had to go where one had to establish one's reputation, and you had to test your courage against the greatest waves in the world and also against the greatest surfers in the world, because at that time, most of all the greatest surfers in the world were from Hawaii. So I think us, a group of my cousin, myself, and a group of young Aussies, we all had the same sort of collective dream that we wanted to compete and we wanted to win in Hawaii. And also we felt that there might be an opportunity to create pro surfing and actually get paid to go surfing.
So it wasn't even grounded yet. It wasn't even like, oh, if we do this, then we get paid. It was we might one day. It may work out. This dream of being a professional surfer. So you guys were taking a stand for that. It wasn't even a reality yet.
I mean, in some ways, we had this dream of pro surfing and making a living from going surfing, but it was all based around this great passion that we had for surfing and the way to perpetuate this surf lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then, but this was a tough time. There was kind of a battle with the cultures there. It was very well documented in Busting Down the Door, which is a fantastic movie. Please check it out if you're listening out there. But and so there was, but you decided you were going to take a stand. You were not going to get pushed around in that place. And I'm trying to put it in perspective for the guy that's listening, who, maybe looking for the easy way, and I'm just imagining you there on the North Shore needing a shotgun to feel a little safe to just go for this dream of the possibility of being a professional surfer.
Over a period of years, we all ran into problems. Ultimately, with essentially the same group of guys who, really tough guys, and these sort of guys on the periphery of the sport who are involved in a lot of illegal activities felt that they were the custodians of Hawaiian culture and heritage, and started threatening us. I got punched out a few times. I got hit with a bottle. I got I narrowly ducked, and it didn't hit me in the head, but it was about an inch away. A lot of guys told me they were going to kill me. So
wow.
After I got really nervous, and like you have to make that decision. What do you do? Do you stay or do you leave? And I mean, really easy to get back jump on a plane and, go back to South Africa. But, I wanted to stay. I loved surfing. Surfing was my life. And in some ways, I suppose I was prepared to die for what I loved. So I drove out to Schofield Barracks to Wahiwa, pretty short drive from the North Shore, and went into the local gun shop and asked the gunsmith, what you got? And he showed me it all: M16s, AR-15s, everything. And I said to him, these guys are tough guys. They I'm not a fighter, I'm a surfer.
Mm,
I said, I need protection. He said, well, take a Remington 12 gauge pump action, semi-auto. I mean, I just come out of the South African military.
right.
And I pumped 10 shells. I think it was 9 or 10 shells into it. I mean, it had a big capacity magazine. And I mean, you just like pump these shells up the barrel, as I remember. It cost me $240. And, I had that for my protection. And then ultimately, um, the situation was resolved. I had a meeting with all these tough guys and all the pro surfers on the North Shore. All the Hawaiian guys came to support me at this meeting. There was about 80 people there to support me and say, "Hey, Shaun hasn't done anything wrong, and
What was that like to feel that support when you had just gone to go protect yourself, bought a firearm to protect yourself, and then realized there was all the support there?
it was great to know that there was that support from these like incredible surfers. People like Larry Bertelman and Barry Kanaipuni. I mean, Barry Kanaipuni was a legend of legends. He was, I mean, he was a guy I admired so much, and to have him get up and say, "Hey, just leave Shaun alone," it's like he said, "Man, I've been to South Africa. There's some pretty big guys down there, and Hawaiians, want to travel, and we can't have this sort of stuff happening." So ultimately, it was resolved peacefully, but it was that one winter was it was a tough winter for me, and then
And to think that these were young men. You guys were young. You guys were, really young and hadn't had a lot of life experience, but being challenged into this place where, the trajectory of professional surfing and surfing in general is being determined. It's a lot of responsibility to put on younger men. You talk about in the book, you tell two stories, not back to back, but you tell two stories that seem to be contrary to one another, at least in the lesson. And I want to tease it out here. So one of those lessons is about you being at Waimea, which is, for those that don't surf, is the big wave spot on the North Shore. And you're on a huge day and you just get worked, you get pounded. And you have this choice to either go in or to go back out. And you choose to go back out and to keep surfing. And you talk about translating that go for it attitude, that getting back up and not quitting, and how that's impacted your ability to create businesses and to keep things floating. And when things are get down to that last part where you don't think you're going to make it, and then somehow you get it to work. And then there was another story in there where you talk about being at another surf spot years later, and being having a misunderstanding with a guy out in the water, to say the least, and he accused you of dropping in on him, and then later on the beach, he sucker punched you. So it was an ugly situation, and you talk about how it impacted your love for the break for years to come. But then you discuss what would have happened if you just given that guy the wave instead of, taking the wave and then, all the chain of events that come after that. So there's these two things here of don't give up, don't back out, and then there's always another wave. There's always another opportunity. But I think this is a chance to discuss some real wisdom here. The big question is, how do we know when to give or when to stand firm here? How do we know when it's time to bend and when it's time to really dig deep and be firm? I'm curious if you've got any thoughts on that.
Well, I think the one story is, and that's after I took just terrific pounding. I think I was 19 years old, maybe 20. At Waimea Bay. I had the worst wipeout of my life on the first wave I'd ever surfed at this legendary wave, Waimea Bay. After getting just savagely beaten and thinking that I'd actually broken my back, and then paddling all the way in and getting back on my board and having to decide what to do. Do I paddle in, or do I paddle back out? And the shore was only 50 yards away. It looked very enticing. And that chapter is really about it's about courage. I think it's about perseverance, and also it is about optimism. That no matter how beaten down you are, that unless you find that courage inside you, and you find that optimism in your soul to know that only by enduring are you going to be able to get another wave.
Mm-hmm.
So this aspect of courage. For me, you don't know that you've got it until you're tested. You really don't. And courage is not an absence of fear. Because when you ride big waves and you ride really, really challenging waves, and you have these times in your life when you're scared. You find the courage when you see that and you look inside yourself and you are willing to still push forward and overcome that feeling of fear. I mean, that's what courage is. It's that sort of life force that pushes you through that fear barrier. So the first aspect is just looking inside yourself and finding that courage and paddling back out. That's what that chapter is about. And then getting a hammering and persevering and pushing through that fear barrier, and then ultimately getting another wave.
So here's the odds, right? Here's the thing that wants to hold me back from my life and all that's possible. And it's time to dig deep. What have I got? What am I made of? This is the time to bring it forward. Even though I'm scared, even though I've got my doubts, I do it anyway.
Yeah, and obviously, I was in a situation where it was a life and death. It was a life and death situation I was in. I mean, I could really easily have drowned that day, and I had to really dig so deep and really go up against that sort of primordial fear of drowning, because I think out of anything that happens in your life, when you get dumped down in water and you go beyond that point where you can control the panic and just relax. There comes a time where, man, you can't relax anymore. You've got to fight. You've got to fight for your life, and you really feel that as a surfer when you have a terrible wipeout, like that wipeout I had that on that particular day. So that fear of dying it's not something, it's overt. It's not something that is that you can think about, but you've experienced it viscerally. You've experienced that moment where it could have been lights out.
But how do we translate that to, because you had a business, and tell us about how you took that experience and then that helped you when it was time to dig deep with your business.
Well, I had a business. My wife and I had a successful business called Solitude. We sold to all the top shops. Our business had been growing really, really well for a number of years. And then when 9/11 hit, it became very, very difficult. And this business was going to be it was our dream: come to America, start a business, and have it have it start to be financially successful. So after 9/11 hit, it was very difficult, and we had invested pretty much everything we had into the business. And after just slugging it out for some time, my wife Carla came to me. She said, "Shaun, we got to close the business down because we have everything invested." And she said, "We'll lose everything. We'll lose everything that we built up, and we've got to shut this business down." So it was with a sort of a very heavy heart that over a period of, I don't know, maybe it was a week, 10 days, we started to say goodbye to the employees and dismantle everything. And then on the last day, I mean, it's amazing how life can work. I'm from my surfing days, I was a fighter. That's when I say a fighter, I'm talking about a fighter in metaphorical terms.
Right.
I never ever gave up. When I surfed a heat, I would surf that heat to the bitter end, no matter what. I mean, I would never quit. It was just, that was a fundamental part of me as a competitor. I would not quit. So it was very hard to deal with the fact that we're going to have to close our business. Then on a Friday afternoon, this was supposed to be the last day of business. The only thing that was left was the company server and my workstation. And the movers came, take it all away. I said, "No, I'm fighting on. This stuff is not going. We're fighting. I'm fighting on." So on the Saturday morning, I get a call from a mate of mine, great, great friend of mine. It was actually one of the original investors in Solitude. He said, "You won't believe what happened. I was at a baseball game, and a guy came up to me. And he said, 'Wow, that's a cool shirt you're wearing.'" So that's kind of miracle number one, because guys never go to another guy, "That's a cool shirt you're wearing." So my friend said, "Well, it's a Solitude shirt at Shaun and Carla Thompson's company. They're actually closing the down their business. And he said, well, my dad and I now are familiar with that brand. We're investors in businesses. Maybe we can meet the Tomsons. We met on the Sunday. We did a handshake deal. We reopened for business on Monday.
Wow.
And, a number of years later, I sold the business to a multi-billion-dollar corporation. But like I got that fighting on attitude from what I learned in the surf, from getting my backside kicked, but still paddling on my board and paddling back out. That notion that you just got to paddle back out because that's when you're going to get the next wave, that absolute feeling of, commitment, single-mindedness. I don't think it's stubbornness, but it's absolute conviction and absolute commitment.
And then how does that translate into this other situation where from a place of like, gosh, what if I just given this guy the wave, this stuff wouldn't have happened? I can imagine that goes against that competitor fighter instinct inside. And I've been out at crowded breaks, and you would think it's life or death and that these are the only waves that are ever going to come in. This is the last one. People are just so kind of narrow-minded about that. What's the shift there? Help us navigate that so we can have that openness and that generosity without, being a wuss, but at the same time not get stuck into this kind of scarcity mindset and stubbornness, as you said.
Well, they're both really connected because the notion of I'll always pedal back out equals I'll never give up. When you pedal back out, you're paddling back out with that feeling in your mind that there's going to be another wave. That's why you're paddling back out. You're paddling back out for another wave. And the connectedness there is that as a surfer, you know that there'll always be another wave. It's not just going to be one wave. There's going to be many waves, and the waves are going to come in sets of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 7. And behind that set, there will be another set. So it also teaches you that one has to have that patience and not have that desperation that this will be the last wave. This is my one and only chance at a wave. When this incident happened to me at Rincon, it was many years ago, and I was sitting waiting for a wave, and I waited for a long time for a wave, and this guy paddled around me, and it was like, I'm going to go. It's my wave. It's this. I have ownership of this wave. I've been sitting. It's my right. And I stuffed the guy and made him fall off. And he came and confronted me on the beach, and I was sitting on the wall, and he said, "Are you Shaun Tomson?" And most of the time surfers are like super friendly guys. And I said, "Yeah," thinking he wanted a chat or something. And he said, "You dropped into me." And I said, "Yeah, it was my wave." So that's how I'm thinking at the time. My mindset's in my wave. He said, "Well, it was my wave." And I said, "It was my wave." And I went, man. I can't remember what I said, and I turned away. And as I turned away, he sucker punched me. And we jumped up, and it turned into a bit of a ugly brawl. So when I thought back on it, at the time I was so convinced that this was my wave, and that when I've thought back over it over the years, it turned into an ugly scene, and it sort of soured my relationship with the break. And that people are going to get so angry they're going to slug you over a wave. It's like you can't change other people. It's very difficult. I mean, you have absolute control over your attitude. You don't have absolute control over your circumstances. So I would rather just think, well, hey man, there'll be another wave, and let that wave go. And it's not like you're giving in. It's not like you're bending over and because a guy has been aggressive and confrontational, just give him away, because there'll be others. And that's surfing, is that there will be many, 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 many other waves. I think it's a far more chilled way to look at life. I mean, certainly I was very, very, very competitive, and certainly I would go head to head. Guy try to paddle around me, paddle my inside, I would go head to head. And sometimes I still do, but I will never get involved in a verbal dispute about a wave right now. It's just not.
Well, it has me wonder. I'm thinking about the guy that's out there. He doesn't surf. He doesn't. But in his life, I'm imagining there are things where maybe it's not even about the money or it's about the thing, but it's actually he whether he realizes it or not, it's a reflection of his self-worth. He's being disrespected. He's not that's what he's really fighting about. It sounds to me that you're not even discussing like that when that place of another wave, that it's not about you at that point. It's not a judgment against you or what you're entitled to or that kind of thing. I just imagine if it's not a very high sense of self-worth, we're going to feel like we've got to defend ourselves all the time, and we will go head to head with somebody like that.
What I'm trying to point out in that chapter is that it's not going to go away, but you as a person have to deal with it in a way that that is still going to give you a good experience in a crowded condition. And I think the best way to do that is just maybe by chilling every now and then. You might get cross and then you just chill and I'm out here, I'm floating. I've got the horizon in front of me. I've got all my troubles behind me. And you just sort of realize that's what's important. You don't have to get that biggest, best wave and maybe someone paddled around you. It ain't a big deal because another wave will come through.
Have some perspective. You talk about in the book, you talk a lot about your son passing away when he was 15 and how difficult that was. You said something here, and this dovetails into what you just said, which was living in the world of what if versus living in the world of what is would have destroyed you and your wife. And I'm just imagining like how you were talking just now that, being out in the lineup and being, well, it shouldn't be this way, and being a no to it, and these people shouldn't be here, and that guy shouldn't have paddled around, robs you of the experience of actually enjoying what is there at that time. But I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit more about what you said and how that relates to the context of being in just that horrible experience after losing your son.
Having that perspective and blaming yourself or blaming or thinking about what could have been. Now, when you experience terrible sorrow, you have that sort of terrible loss, it's very difficult to accept the reality of it. It's that's just the way it is. And in some ways, you can escape by maybe not accepting it. But ultimately, you're going to have to accept that terrible reality that you're going to have to live your life differently now because your life has changed. You don't have that physical connection anymore with that person you love. They're gone. There's so many what ifs that it can destroy you. It really can destroy you, and you cannot live, whether it's from a loss or in any circumstances. You can't say that. You can't live in that world of conjecture. You have to live in that world of hard fact, and it's a hard fact. So that I had written that because it ultimately it helped me so much. It's just, you've got to accept it. It's not what if, it's what is. It was an easy way for me to accept the terrible finality of what had happened, and it helped me deal with the loss, because it's the metaphor that is used in so much literature is that it's that journey, it's that long hard road that one has to keep walking on. And my boy had read me this beautiful essay that he'd written 2 hours before he died, and he'd written a line in that essay: "The light shines ahead." It was one of a line in this essay that he'd written about tube riding, and tube riding is what I used to do. Tube riding was my my sort of specialty in surfing, and for him to write this beautiful essay that was very perceptive and just really encapsulated the tube riding experience, and then for him inside that to say the light shines ahead, both from a perspective of what happens when you're inside the tube, and then also from a perspective of how one has to look at life, that one has to know that the sun will rise tomorrow. The sun will will absolutely rise tomorrow, that the night will give way to light.
What a powerful message to get actually from him. Instead, I just trying to imagine like, yeah, but right now I'm hurting. But that actually came from him. That was coming directly from him. And do you imagine it might have been hard to hear that message had it not come from him?
Oh, it's, the whole notion of like imagining something different. It's, I never really went there because I think you have to live in this present time. You can't live in the past, and you can't live in that future. It's I never thought of it that way. It was just like this is what it is right now, and this is what I have to accept, and this is what I have to deal with, and I have to build my life. I have to build my attitude around this. This concept of attitude. It's when you have a loss, you just think about life differently. You look at it differently. You get like this knowledge. You don't want it. You don't ask for it. It just comes to you, and I think it's just a way of you being able to deal with and learning how to deal with a tragedy. And none of us have got absolute control of our circumstances. You don't know. I could walk out of this room and there'd be an earthquake and my home would fall on me, or I could walk across the road and a car would run me over.
Right.
The next session, and who knows what could happen. But you have absolute control of your attitude. Absolute control of your attitude. And I've always felt that your attitude is defined about how you think about life, how you think about the present, how you think about the past, how you think about the future. That all forms how you think about this moment. And that's what my books are about. My books are about about building this positive attitude. And my new book is absolutely written to empower positive attitude. That is what it is all about. There's an exercise in the back of the book that's free that I'm trying to get introduced into every single school in the nation. It's a simple empowerment exercise. It takes 30 minutes and it's 12 lines. Every line begins with I will. That's it. You write your own code. 12 lines, every line begins with I will. And I found that it is so empowering to think about your values and think about the future and write it down. Think about it and write it down in the present. Because when you write your thoughts down, they develop this great power, I think. These words ultimately will become your actions, and your actions, powered by your attitude, are going to define you.
I think you did it well. I've enjoyed reading. I've read both of the books, and love how you're giving us some very positive lessons to learn, and they come from gritty places. This isn't just do like I do, and there you won't have any bumps in the road kind of thing. You're teaching us and sharing from a place of real challenges that you've had, and to me that's what really has it ground and be very powerful.
The books are not like, well, follow my lessons for success. They're not written that way. The books are just written to maybe create a little spark for someone to write their own code, for someone to sit down and in half an hour just write these 12 promises to themselves. That's what the books are written for. Here's a statistic that very, very few people know about in America. Last year, 2.4 million people died in the United States. 1 million out of that 2.4 million died from bad choices. 1 million people. 617,000 American troops died in the Second World War between 1939 and 45. 617,000. 55,000 troops died in Vietnam. But last year, 1 million people died from bad choices. So this notion of empowering people to make positive choices, and there's many, 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 many ways that people can be empowered to make positive choices. I've offered up one little simple free solution, and maybe someone somewhere, a little kid or whoever it is, will maybe do this exercise and think about maybe their future differently and make one decision differently.
There's a lot to be learned there. The book we're talking about is The Code, The Power of I Will. Visit ShaunTomson.com. Shaun, thank you so much for talking today. I feel like we're just scratching the surface on what you've got to offer here. I'm glad you're writing, glad you're sharing this out there in the world. It's been an honor to have you on the show.
Awesome, Tripp. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Cheers, man.
There's so much more to The New Man than these interviews, so visit thenewmanpodcast.com and join the mailing list so you never miss another update. Thanks for listening.